All right. I am so excited to have you back on the podcast, Miss Stevie. Of course, to talk about Q4, geek out about all the things that we are getting ready to step into, because I know that when we first sat down for the 2024 like astrological and Akashic forecast, we talked about what a huge year this was going to be. And throughout this year, it's just been like this culmination, like this step, up throughout the year. And I know that the Akasha has just, I mean, been preparing us for months now that this last quarter is just, it's going to be massive. We're going out with a bang. It's kind of what it feels like. And I'm very excited to just sit down and talk with you, share with you in regards to what has come through from an Akashic perspective, but definitely to hear about the astrology. The astrology has been so grounding for me over the past few months because I feel like what's been coming through the Akasha could be interpreted in so many ways. And, the Akasha leaves a lot of space for us to kind of tap into our own channels and to feel into the energy on those levels. And so the astrology for me, especially the past couple months, has just been like, oh, that's what that is. Okay. Like it's really helped me to just kind of further refine what has come through the Akasha. So I've been additionally thankful for it lately. Um, and before we dive in here, I just want to remind everyone, first and foremost, you can come watch this on YouTube if you would like to. But in addition, Stevie and I created the 2024 Astrological and Akashic Forecast Toolkit that is jam-packed, especially now. There's so much content inside of it between Stevie's Akashic forecasts and my astrological forecasts. And this is going to be way marked down. And so make sure to grab this if you want to really have this tool for the rest of 2024. There's an Akashic activation inside. There's a number of things that you can utilize, even though we have kind of moved past those quarters. So be sure to check that out. And I'll definitely leave a link in the show notes for you. So welcome, Stevie. How has your 2024 been?
Thanks for having me. I always love chatting with you. It's been a bumpy ride, but I like your analogy of up and up and up. It feels like that. It feels like it's like a building on. Um, I feel like I've really had to learn how to trust, like for real though. I think everyone has. And it feels too like we're moving into a time where we can't necessarily plan 5 years out anymore. Like it just doesn't work. We have to be more present. At least in my life it feels that feels to be true in my clients too.
Which is a good thing, right? Because of course, like, I mean, it's so interesting for me to think back about life pre-COVID, pre-2020, just in regards to the pace that we were living and how we were all just kind of on auto drive and you know what I mean? Just like go, go, go. We got like 50 lanes of things that we're doing and like all this stuff. And it's just been like every year just chopping off more, like, kicking and screaming, trying to go back to it for a while. And then we realized, like, no, that actually kind of sucked. We want this new
Totally.
kind of life where, like, people aren't working as much, people are working in better situations, like there's more equity amongst, like, we're moving there, but it's just been a really interesting ride. Do you see that kind of like that kind of breakdown as well when you look back?
Definitely. Definitely. And I think there's only more of that to come too, because like we're creating a new reality for ourselves. So we have to get through all the things that don't work anymore, like it's happening for us, even though it's kind of a rough transition in some ways. But I wouldn't go back, right? I don't think anybody would.
No, no. And I think that honestly, at least for me, these past several years have definitely been very difficult and really called me to stand up in a way that I hadn't ever honestly known that I could. But I feel like the universe has definitely been really good about not giving us too much to handle at one time. It's just been like that incremental, like, oh, look, you've got some space. Let me chuck some shit in there. And like, once you work through that and you're feeling strong and you had a little bit of a break, then it's like, okay, maybe a little bit more time for some more. Has it been that way for you?
For sure. Absolutely.
Um,
Definitely.
yeah, it's 2024 has been a really interesting year. And Stevie and I are like in two different sorts of, she's in 85-degree weather. And I'm like over here in a turtleneck because we're having a really nice cold spell in Colorado. I
It
just have
was
to
like
point
that
that
in
out.
Michigan. It was like that, and then it got warm again. I'm like, okay, this makes you want fall when you have this. You're like, okay, I'm ready.
Oh my gosh. I am so over it. And I have congregated a nice little community of people who are like anti-summer, like I am, on Threads. And so we can all just like, no, 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 just like done. Okay. So yeah, like if you were to kind of recap how 2024 has been unfolding for us collectively, like what would you say?
A couple of things. Like, we've really been in the midst of the North Node being in Aries and the South Node being in Libra, learning the lessons of like what truly is the self, like who are you for real, but for real, like without your old patterns and the stuff that you grew up with and all the relationship stuff that you've held on to, like who are you? And that has been a really big theme for me, for my clients, for everyone in my life, basically, is like kind of a reinvention of self, which I know we spoke about this in the forecast in the beginning in 2024. So that is still such a big theme of like really letting go of patterns, especially with who you have been in relationships and how you want to show up in them in this new version of yourself. And that's required quite a lot of work, quite a lot of letting go and conversations and all the things. And then the other thing too is that Jupiter has been hanging out in Gemini, just expanding all of us and putting new perspectives in our minds and maybe overwhelming you with a lot of information. um and that's really like been a beautiful transit, I think, to really change and open people's perspectives and like less black and white thinking and less division and less, all of that stuff. And one of the key things about 2024 has been Pluto dancing in the final degrees, which he just went into the final degrees of Capricorn to end his time there since 2008. And as of November 19th, he moves into Aquarius for the next 18 years. So, that's a big one. He's literally taking down the systems and structures, and this is his last hurrah. And that's what makes this last quarter so interesting, I think. And that's what's made 2024 so interesting, is because we actually want the systems to crumble, right? And the authority figures and all the governments and everything that's not serving us. We have to be okay with it falling first so that the people can create their own new reality. But it's alarming to a lot of people. We're watching it happen.
Yeah, I think it's been so much of like anytime we think about change and the process of change and how we enact change, first and foremost, it's all about the awareness, right? And I feel like 2024 has been such a big year of actually being able to see things a lot more clearly, see our government, see Hollywood, see, like just the systems that like are not serving us yet are in place, like healthcare in the US.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like, it's absurd that we're living with these things and that we haven't fought back against them. We have, that we're not in the streets about them, but we've just, again, like I was talking about a minute, ago, it's like pre-pandemic, we were all just like in our own lane, just going just on auto drive and not really paying attention. And, where things were going pretty good, like it was working okay. It was enough. And then of course everything just kind of stopped, right, with the pandemic, and that review began. I have definitely, I mean, that Aries component has just been massive in my own life. And I have been so loving that. That's really come to light over the summer. But I can't really say like, I feel like I've connected much with the Jupiter and Gemini energy much. I felt like I was much more connected to like Jupiter in
In
Taurus.
Taurus.
Yeah. And Gemini, like
Me
I'm just,
too.
I honestly had totally forgotten about that transit until you mentioned it. I thought it
It's
was
a
gonna
funny one.
I thought it was gonna be a bit more chaotic or something, or I don't know. How might that have been showing up for us in ways that you didn't already share?
So just for me, like I'm not a I like read books. This is just a very small example. Um, but I read for help. Like I read to learn. I read because I'm one of those people that's like, well, if I'm going to read, I'm going to be, making myself better in some way, But I've
Taurus.
read like so much fairy smut. Like, I mean, I've read like 7 books that into the fantasy land. I'm like, this is so fun. This is so fun to just read for pleasure. Tiny
Nice.
example, but there are a lot of people out there in the world that I'm noticing that they're realizing how divided we are and how that's distracted us so much, like how the systems have controlled us through division, even putting yourself in 2 different camps, and I'm for this and you're for that. And I feel like Jupiter and Gemini is this really slow like data collection that we're all on, like just talking to different people and collecting new information. Like we're more open to it.
Hmm.
I think it's slow, and if you do feel physically like there's like for me, it does feel a little bit like overwhelming, the information and the conversations and all the talking and like but it's in my third house. So
Hmm.
it's also why. So it depends on where in your chart it is, of course, like where you're expanding. But I think it's a slow opening
That's
to different
interesting.
truths. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been in my 11th house, and I think that I've been quieter online this year than I probably have been maybe ever, honestly. It's been so internal for me. It's been like the
Mm.
opposite, really. I was excited because I thought it was really going to light up that part of my chart. And again, I completely thought forgotten about that transit till you till you mentioned it. Um, but it kind of had
There's
the opposite effect, you know. And I do feel like though that in the midst of this year, it's been kind of a regrouping. And I think as kind of the year moves on, it might be more of a because Jupiter's still got like a bit there, right?
Yeah, he does. He does until into next year. So
Right.
um I don't have my ephemeris, but yeah, he's still there for because he will be retrograding October 9th. So it might hit that like from October 9th into the early parts of next year, he's going to change his flavor a little bit. So you might notice it differently.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, the retrogrades seem to kind of affect me more. Like when Saturn goes retrograde, it's like I feel that
Yeah.
a lot more.
Their
Um,
energy.
yeah. Okay, so 2024, our theme was redefining yourself, which like is so aligned. I actually talked about this a little bit in the September Akashic forecast. How have you seen this coming to light in your own life, in your clients' lives? I'm sure that this is definitely kind of attached to the Aries, Libra, nodes, but thoughts.
Yeah, definitely attached to those. I feel like it's like such a slow because it's 18 months that the nodes usually spend in 2 signs, right? Because it's the oppositions. But for me in my life, I feel so much more authentically myself because I've like shed, but it's not been like dramatic. Like the nodal shift is like this slow burn that happens. It feels like I have less guilt, less people pleasing, I have more boundaries. Like it's just easier to be myself, which I love that because my all of my shadows live in Libra. So I really appreciate this nudge to Aries. So I've seen a lot of clients just want to understand who they are on such a deeper level and like shed these old stories and beliefs. Have you noticed that as well, like in yourself?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I was sharing with you before we kind of started, June and July were freaking so hard. But I felt like I walked out of that fire like rock solid, baby. Just like I'm here, like this sassy, cussing, much more intense version of myself really came forward unapologetically. It's always
Mhm.
been there, but it's only been there with people I felt safe, you
Yeah.
know? And because of course, like, I mean, I'm a very strong personality. I have a lot. I'm intense. And, as girls, we were raised to be quiet, to sit in the corner, to not talk back, to not disagree, to do all these things. And, the ways that I was growing up were constantly, you know, shown to me to be wrong, 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 wrong. I mean, I remember like in 8th grade, like when I finally came back into public school, like, you know, these girls would be like, Anna, do you like so and so? And I would just be like, no, I don't. And it wasn't a vindictive, malicious thing. It was just like, yeah, we're not for everybody. I just don't like them, you know? And oh my gosh, they would get so like, you know, they would come after me and like all these, they were terrible. And so, of course, I put these parts of myself away. And they have just been coming out so ferociously. It's just like, no, I don't have to like you. I don't have to like this. I don't have to abide by these things anymore. This part of my personality is like, you know, it's taken a back seat. And I've always had a strong personality, but this is like, I've had to have a couple of talks with myself. Like, are you okay? Are you going to like blow everything up? Like, are we all right? But it feels really good too, you know? And I've just decided like, okay, if I say something wrong, I can apologize. If I do something wrong, I can make it right. Like, I'm not interested. I don't want to police myself anymore, you know?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
know that that's really going to serve my work, and it already has. The way the Akashic comes through is so different. Like it's just really, I feel like I have stepped into myself in a way that I mean, I couldn't have predicted. I couldn't have, you know, and it's not something like I fought so hard and I
Yeah.
like, I didn't do anything. I just
Yeah.
survived, you know?
Totally. Totally get it. Yeah, it's kind of subtle, and then you're like, oh, I'm actually, if you look back, you know, you're like, oh, kind of different.
When it
Great.
first started coming in, I was just like, what is happening? Did I like have a lot of caffeine or something? Or like and I started a couple of arguments on threads, like not even intending to. And it was like, wait a minute. But then I checked in with myself and it was like, no, this is how you feel. And like, no, they can't tell you how to feel. And you know what I mean? It's just such a release from the past, you know, the worry, the concern. Like I'm not afraid anymore of people ganging up on me online and saying a bunch of mean things to me anymore. It's just like, okay, it's your opinion.
Totally.
It feels like a superpower. Do you see that in your own life?
Yeah, I think that like the Aries North nodes really asked us to get kind of angry, like, and get brave and like just go, you know, it's like the pioneer, just do you, like you are an individual, you
Yeah.
know, like you're a human. Like I've just felt more human almost, and like okay with being a human. Like, sorry, not sorry, you know, like
It's a
it's
perfect way
definitely
to
felt,
explain it.
yeah, feels
Not
good.
sorry.
Like,
Not
not
sorry for
sorry.
being human.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it. I love it. All right. For everyone who's listening, you got to share with us like how you feel like, you know, after that, like if you're resonating with anything that we're sharing about, like definitely hit us up on social. You can leave comments below on YouTube. Because I would love to know. I mean, I've seen this with my clients, but I'm always curious to hear, you know, from the listeners. So all right,
Yeah.
so let's dive into Q4. And I would love for you maybe just to kind of give us like a little bit of an overview of what you think Q4 is about, before we kind of dive in and break it down a little bit more.
So Q4 is kind of like the end of the end before the beginning. And we have a lot of like, I mean, we enter Q4 with eclipse season. So we're already in this portal where eclipses are very much transformational, and you kind of just get shoved into your soul's destiny, or letting go, either way. And then we have Pluto moving into Aquarius, and then we have some retrograde. So it feels like a lot of the planets, even the outer planets, are at the very ends of their signs. And so we've been through these journeys, you know, since 2008, since 2018, since for a while now, where this is like the culmination where we receive clarity and where things actually end. Um, and it's also, I think too, like just kind of seeing the fruits of your labor, you know, like how the journey that you've been on and where what's gone on. And the end of the year is always that way, I think. Like it's just a reflection. But any year we move into more of a shadowy darkness feeling as we hit the autumn equinox. So this is also an invitation to really honor and go more inward as the autumn equinox, as our days our darkness gets longer and longer, and we're really here to honor that in us. So, but the end of this year is definitely get ready for the new, but you have to complete this first, basically, like the completion.
What are some ways in which you think what are some things you think we need to complete?
I would say some of it has to do with the things that we were talking about, like really looking back at how much you've grown and how much more of you're being now. Um, and how in which you've shown up in relationship in the old ways, and how you want to do it now, and you want to carry this over, because once we go through these cycles, it's not like you go back to your old versions. These are like the new you, and you just keep moving forward, basically. So that's one way. And also I think collectively we're ending Neptune and Pisces, um which starts in March into Aries. So that really signifies a time where we've been in a spiritual upgrade since Neptune's moved into Pisces for very many years. But it's also like, this is where the dream kind of ends, and where the curtain is like unveiled, right? On all the places in which we've been clouded or manipulated.
Mm-hmm.
And with Pluto moving into Aquarius, it's like, if you want to create a new reality society, then you have to start to realize how you've given your power away, and how you've given your authority away, and in which ways they've done it to you, right? And so we have to see all of that and be really honest with ourselves, so that we can then take the power back. Because I mean, Pluto in Aquarius and Neptune in Aries is like power to the people. That's really like what's going to happen. That we have to create our own realities. We can't lean on authorities to do it for us or to tell us what truth is anymore. So it's kind of like the curtain is pulled back. That's really what it signifies. And so that can be alarming when you realize some of the things you've believed in aren't true, or you've been manipulated. I think a lot of people are realizing this now, since 2020, essentially. But in also, like, this is all happening so that we can create a new reality for humanity. So really leaning into like what you want that to be, because we create that. That's just how it works, I know it sounds so cheesy, but like, you manifest your thoughts in your reality. So if you're going to keep playing into these old systems, right, and keep doing these things in your life, then all we're going to do is see more of that. So really, it's like dreaming a new dream. What can it be? And it's going to take us to create the reality.
What do you think are some tangible ways that people can ensure that they do that in their personal lives?
So I would say turn off the news, for one thing. I know that's like really aggressive to say, but
No,
please
please do it. Dear God.
please stop watching the propaganda that is paid for by corporations.
It's insane to me. I mean, like, literally this, because I don't watch news. I don't think I've ever really watched news. This is not my thing. It's always kind of repulsed me. But this year, because I read the sports news like every night, because I'm a big Premier League nerd. And to see the ways in which they manipulate the information is just like, oh my gosh. I can't even imagine what they're doing out there with like the news,
Yeah,
like,
it's all a script, and it's all paid for by corporations, right? Just like our
gosh.
government is paid for by corporations. Like, just like you're dividing us, and it's just keeping us in a sense of division. And it's where they want us to be, where we can be controlled, right? It's just like another form of religion. It's
Yeah.
like what it is.
As
So
long as we're fighting, then we're not paying attention to what's really going on.
absolutely, we have no power.
Yeah.
So really, I would say, like, besides like being aggressive and saying turning off the news, like, watch where you're taking in information, and like watch how your body feels about it, because I feel like the end of the year too, like a lot's going to be coming at us, and some
Yeah.
of it's going to be confusing, and some of it's going to be alarming, and like, who knows how they're going to spin things and what's going to go down. And so try not to play in it too much, and just kind of observe and watch. Eat your popcorn, like watch as this, just trust that the system is going to crumble, you know, and the more you give that energy, the quicker it will happen. Like, if we all just like detach from it, it would be very quick. So, and then also like think about in your life what you do want to be your reality. What do you want our educational systems to be like? What do you want our governments to be like? Do you want to live in more community? Like, we get to create that. Truly, that's what we're waking up to. So thinking about that and like putting energy into that, even into your own life. What do you want your day to day to be like? What do you want your relationships to be like? Like, you really have to spend time thinking about that as if it's true, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I feel like so for the past, I don't even know, 4 or 5 months, the Akasha keeps asking the same question. Who do you want to be in these times? Who do you want to be? It's so important for us to define that for ourselves. And defining that is so much about like not just who our character is, but how do we want to live our life? How do we want to experience society around us? How do we want to show up in the midst of all of that? Like, what role do we want to play? It feels like because the pace is picking up so rapidly that it's going to get harder and harder for us to clarify those things if we don't do them ahead of time.
Yeah.
And I know that's the Akasha again, like every month, that's part of the message. Do you see that as well, like within the astrology?
No, I mean, I completely think I mean, I feel like that's part of like what's happening with the crumble in the beginning. But I love that reminder of like, how do you want to deal with these times? Because, you know, we're souls came here during this time for like, this is it. This is like totally why we came. At least I did. Many of us did.
We have front
Probably
row
a lot of people
seats.
listening are like, ooh, I want to watch the old and the new come together and be a part of it. Like, and our souls have done this many times. I'm assuming a lot of souls on earth. I'm sure you've seen that more than I have, but like that feels like that there's so much truth in that, and how we handle the stress or change or whatever is coming is like, you can either handle it with like curiosity, which I think is Jupiter and Gemini kind of giving us like, don't you just see it's a game and just collect your data and like, you know, take a bigger picture view on like all of the different realities, or we can get really stressed out and freaked out and, you know, try to ground back into something that feels safe. Like, this is why we came here. I keep reminding myself of this as I go through these changes and keep getting asked to trust when things aren't happening in my own plan, you know, like that's not how it works right now anymore. I don't think it's supposed
No,
to.
no. The very last, just because we're talking about this, the very last part of the Q4 Akashic forecast, they said, being on the planet at this time is a great gift. Being on the planet at this time is a choice you chose for yourself. So when you get caught up and you find yourself lost or you want to blame and point fingers, remember you chose to be here. You decided to experience all this, and you are 100% responsible for that experience.
Fuck yeah. I love this. Just full body goosebumps. Like, that feels like so true. And we're not victims, basically. That's what we really have to watch, because we've been programmed to be victims of everything, right? Our healthcare, our government, teachers, like parents. And that's the role that we had. And so now it's like, that's what people are waking up to. And once you realize that, then you're like, oh shit, I have to take responsibility for all of it.
Dude, yes.
You
And
know,
and
it's a big thing.
exactly. And to remember, like, we are choosing these healthcare systems. We are choosing these school systems. We are choosing these things by letting them continue to be a
Yes.
thing,
Yeah.
and we do have a say in it, but we have, for so many decades and centuries on this planet, we were just birthed to be part of the crowd, part of the family, to
Yeah.
go along, to take orders.
Yeah.
People get so pissed off about the difference between like, the boomers and the Gen Z. And I'm like, the boomers took orders. Gen Z is like, wait a minute, why? Explain to me what's going on here. And if I'm on board, then I'm happy to help. But if I'm not,
Yep.
I'm out.
Absolutely.
Which is a beautiful thing.
Yes. And it's the
And
evolution of humanity that's very necessary.
yes, absolutely.
Very necessary.
Absolutely. I mean, it's really just like, it's like watching like a a child, right, grow into an adult. It's like, I mean, I know the world is changing right now, and so more and more children are so much more awoke and
Mhm.
themselves. But it's just like, I mean, in my generation, you know, and yours the same, like we were taught to take orders, we were taught to do all these things. And then the older we get, the more we realize, like, yeah, I don't have to do that. You know, I
Yeah.
can do it my own way.
Yeah, and I think
Um,
parents even at that level are realizing like, oh wait, you don't have to hug Uncle Fred if you don't want to hug him. You don't
yeah.
have to.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, I don't? Like it's so subtle. These, like how we're empowering this generation to do it differently. I really feel like in 10 years, all these systems are going to look so different, like
Yeah.
so different. And it's so exciting to
It
me.
really is. It really is. No, I'm completely with you. Every time I have
Yeah.
a conversation with boomers, usually, who are just, I mean, you know, since Kamala stepped in, there's a lot more hope in the US collective anyway. But like it's just um everyone was like so freaked out for so long. And it's like, we're good. Things have to fall apart so they can be made better. Like this is part of the process, regardless of who gets in office, regardless of any of these things. Like it's just, you know, we've got to go through the
Oh
difficult
yeah.
stuff, you know?
Yep. And they all play roles in that. And that is even if we have answers after anyone is even in office. Because I don't know,
Yeah, I
based on the
know.
astrology.
I know.
We'll see about that.
I shared this one podcast with this guy who was talking about 2025, 2026, and he's like this like legend ancient astrologer, and he was saying that like he didn't see Biden or Trump in like at all. And obviously Biden's already stepped out, but I was just like, and the freaking interviewer, she didn't go into like Trump. I'm like, come on, like this is not a political thing. Like I just want to know like what you're seeing. You know, I was just curious about that. She didn't even go there, but anyway.
Yeah.
Um, so okay. So I know from an Akashic perspective, like reading for the Q4, I mean, it kicks off hard. And it really feels like we are definitely, there's major culmination in this Q4. There's going to be major sort of like earthquake type. And I don't necessarily mean that literal, but like earthquake type episodes. You know, like we're really going to see the dismantling of some more people who are in power. We're really going to like some systems are really going to fall apart even in this short amount of time. Like it feels really, really big. Like the energy was not shy. It did not hold off one bit. Um,
Yeah.
so talk with us. I know there's like tons of transits in Q4, but let's just like focus on the most important ones for folks.
Yeah. I have a little outline of like the most important ones. So the first part, like we on September 17th, we have that full moon lunar eclipse in Pisces, and it's conjunct Neptune. So I know that's not technically part of Q4, but it's definitely a big part of the end of the year, because
It's
when you
huge.
have a full lunar eclipse in Pisces conjunct Neptune, that's where the veil, like Neptune is the media. So to me, I feel like this full moon lunar eclipse is not necessarily just about us. It's like global healing, global surrender, global compassion. And Neptune can make things kind of confusing, but also it feels like there's a veil with this. Something coming off, some information coming up. I'm not sure exactly. Um, Definitely an emotional Piscean energy to this one too, but it feels like there's a sextile to Uranus and Pluto, which these are all outer planets, which is like collective transformation. Feels big to me for some reason.
No, it feels huge.
Um, yeah, like big surrender, big this is a north node eclipse, so it has to do with complete endings and new beginnings too. So it's like collective destiny with this one. Um, so that's really quite big, and you might feel emotional around that time. And eclipses, they're the times when our collective souls are pushed either to end or to begin, or to let go, or to like make new pathways. So eclipse seasons are definitely like a shove, like a kick in the butt to do things in your own life, and then collectively too. They're just big times, basically. Nothing to be feared, but just like certainly these like very karmic cycles. And then we have a solar eclipse on October 1st at 10 degrees of Libra, and this is a south node new moon. So there's something about, although it's a new moon and that's like it's planting a new seed, this is about letting go of like that old version of you. Libra's shadow in a solar eclipse has everything to do with people pleasing, harmonizing when it's not your problem, showing up without boundaries in relationship, not truly being yourself, basically. So like putting on the pretty face that's like not real, basically. So October 1st, we start Q4 with the solar eclipse. And it has a lot to do with like who you are being now and the versions that you used to be. And so I find too, like Aries and Libra, it is about like who we are in humanity, and then who like Libra is like the humanity side of things too, so it's like, how am I showing up and how can I be more myself, basically. And then November 19th, Pluto moves back into Aquarius for a very long time. So no more Capricorn. So from now until November 19th, he's finishing his business and the systems and structures will crumble. And Pluto in Aquarius is all about when Pluto first moves into a sign, he shows us the shadow because that's what he does. He's like, look what needs to be transformed. Look what needs to be peeled back. And so for the first couple of years, and he's already been in Aquarius for a couple of years, like popping in and out, we've been seeing the shadow of humanity, right? Like we've been seeing what needs to be done. This is also very innovative. You can imagine technologies and systems are going to look very different because of this. But this is where the people take the power back, essentially, powered in unity and living a completely different life. So we will see also the shadow of Aquarius is like where big groups of people will gang up and tell individuals that they're wrong. Like we saw that during COVID, like this is the only way to be, you're a piece of crap if you don't do this. Like that will also happen because Aquarius likes to do what's best for the whole group. And sometimes that means individual freedoms are lost. So that might be something that we deal with. So yeah, we have a very long time with Pluto in Aquarius. And then on the 25th, Mercury goes retrograde for the last time this year in Sagittarius until December 16th. And so that means that the few weeks leading up and the few weeks after, so for the rest of the year, basically are very slowed down. There's a slowed down revisit, review. Sagittarius carries a little bit of this, like, this is the shadow of Sagittarius is a lot of this black and white thinking, like well, this is my experience. This should be your experience because this is what my beliefs are. So we're going to get a moment where we're like, maybe we should rethink some things, some of our beliefs or this divided feeling that we have. Maybe we should, and at an individual level, maybe we should rethink our vision for ourselves. Because Sagittarius is very much like, what's the dream? What's the vision? What's the justice? So that's all going to be up for question. And I imagine with Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius that justice will be a big thing. I don't know how or what, how it's going to play out, but
usually is, isn't it?
yes, true justice. And then December 6th, Mars will be retrograde in Cancer. So September 4th, Mars moved into Cancer. And he will be retrograde until February 24th, 2025. So from December 6th through February 24th, Mars will be moving backwards in Cancer. And just to give you perspective, Mars spends 6 weeks in a sign, which is quite a long period of time. You're like really focused in one area of your life for 6 weeks. And then you're like, okay, now I'm onto this thing, right? Like my last 6 weeks, I was like reading like crazy person. Now I'm like over it. I'm not doing that anymore. But when he spends 6 months, really long time, and Mars is like our drive and our action and where we go forward and our masculine energy. And so when he's retrograde, that is all inward, which is these cycles are so necessary. They are like a clear out purge, but holy shit, is this frustrating. Like it's frustrating. It happens every 2 years. I remember though, when Mars was retrograde in Aries, I really liked it because one, I was born under Mars retrograde, but two, that's when I was like, hang on, who am I? Like I really got extra time to choose myself. So in Cancer, this is about emotions, home and family life, how you nurture yourself, how you come back to center, what your security blankets are. And I'm just going to say it. It might be a bubble bursting to the housing market. Could be.
Like in a good way?
I mean, it's not great right now, right? I'm looking for a house and it's terrible. It's like so unattainable for most humans that are hardworking. So it might be a reset in that place. But either way, it is definitely a slowdown period for humanity. So we're going to start 2025 like very slow. The end of this year, we were like, chill out. So yeah, retrograde and then retrograde. And they overlap, right? So Mercury and Mars will be retrograde for that first week of December.
Wow.
That's going to be squishy.
Wow.
Tattoo
Ew.
artists, they call it spicy. They're like, ooh, that spot's spicy. I'm like, you mean absolutely traumatizing and painful?
The worst ever.
Spicy? Sure. It's spicy. That always happens to me. Like, oh, that's awful. So yeah, that's like, those are the majority of things. The only other thing I'm going to say is that Neptune, like I mentioned, is ending his time in Pisces. He moves in March into Aries, and the nodes will change in January to Pisces, Virgo. So like December also is like the end of that cycle. So yeah, definitely massive, massive endings. 2025 is going to feel very different energetically. Like it goes from like water, it goes into more of like a fiery air versus like watery earth.
I'm excited.
Yeah, more into tornado from like muddy.
I feel like I can handle tornado way, way better than muddy.
I feel the opposite. So it's gonna be interesting. I'm like made of mostly earth. I'm like, oh no, no, no. Earth and water. Yeah.
I
So how does
mean,
that land when I say that? Like what comes up for you?
well, first of all, just to be honest, I'm so annoyed with like the year ending slow, beginning slow. That's been happening the past couple of years. I'm
It
just
did.
like,
It started
freaking
slow. It's
seriously? Like,
slow. The last 2 years started slow with retrogrades.
yeah, yeah. Now we've got this one, the third. And this one, both Mercury and Mars. Okay.
Yeah, December especially. It's like,
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Muddy is definitely very much how that feels to me. And like big boots, put your big boots on to wade through that mud because it's going to be rough. Um,
we need it. Like I feel like we're gonna need extra time to investigate. That's what it feels like. Like big things are gonna go down. They're gonna be like, whoa, 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 hey, whoa. Do you know what I'm saying? Like that's what it feels like.
yeah, I'm just all fire, so I kind of have to throw a bit of a tantrum about it first.
Yes.
I'd be a little pissed, and then I'm like, okay, now I can talk about it.
Oh, get that. I get that.
Yeah, I mean, I again, like literally the way the Akasha kicked off the Q4 is it's very intense. They say there will be governments that are toppling. There will be people whose real identity is being shown. There will be masks removed and evil seen in places where you thought only good resided. There will be many people who have been leading the public, but doing so from poor intentions that will be made known. Yes, yes, this is a pulling back so that you can fully see and take in and grasp all it is that is happening so that you can choose to make different decisions. And I just feel that really aligns with, I mean, like, because if we are moving really fast, then we're not going to be paying attention, but if things are really slowed down, then we will be forced to pay attention to what's going on, because we will be in those moments. And I think just like, for us naturally as human beings, most of us are very external beings, right? So when things get difficult or they feel icky inside, like we latch on to the outside world, like, ooh, let me fix this person. Ooh, let me fix this thing anywhere but to fix ourselves. Right.
Yeah.
And I feel like that might actually be a positive through this period of time, so that we will really be paying a lot more attention to the outside world, instead of in being too internal. That's what it feels like to me anyway, just kind of intuitively.
Yeah.
And, again, here in the US, we're going to be going through election time, whether or not we actually have a president. who's to say?
Yeah.
But I think that regardless of what channel I've listened to, what astrologer I've listened to, we all agree that the election probably will never look the same after this year. Like it's just, it's changing, period. And whatever it is that causes that change, you know, within the collective is going to be really interesting to see. And I think the younger generations will be on board for it. I think the older generations will be the one like having, you know, like really struggling with it and really like, you know, I look at my father's generation and the questions that they're asking, and it's difficult for me because, you know, I'm very blessed in that I can see things from a wide perspective, obviously from the work that I do, which is really what's given me so much perspective, but from a younger generation as well, who's kind of like, all right, it's time for y'all to tap out. So like, we can tap in because like you made a mess of things and we need to make it better, you know? But yes. And, you know, I think coming up to the end of this year, the things that really came forward in regards to some of the things I just want to kind of point out, the importance of taking care of ourselves through this is going to be massive. And specifically the body. We put our body through so much over the past several years. And I know that I have really been called into deep work with my physical health this year in a really huge way. But this is, you know, one of the biggest themes from the 2024 Akashic forecast. And the Akasha has continued talking about it every quarter. In addition to, you know, also in some of the monthly readings, but you know, for those of you who are not taking care of your physical body, like this is where you're going to really see some culmination of that if you don't get very serious about it. Because our physical bodies are physical, you know, regardless of how much our spirit can take and how much our heart can take, the body breaks down and it wears down. And so we've really got to be very serious about that. And it feels like too, with some of these transits that are coming up, that they're just kind of probably going to be taking us through the ringer, you know, in one way or another, with that. So yeah, it's going to be interesting, you know, but making the body a priority is, I don't think it's massive. It's massive
Yes.
for us. Do you
Yeah.
see that as well in the astrology?
Yeah. 100%. And I feel like Mercury retrograde in Sag is going to ask us what is true, but hang on, like what is actually true here? And I think Mars in Cancer is going to say like, but you have to nurture your body and you have to nurture your roots, you know, like you can't, you have to, like very much seeing that. And I feel like too, like the more solar flares we have, the more light, because we're traveling in a place in the cosmos that is literally more light. We're in a brighter area. And so our bodies become less physical with this, which means like we're, that makes us more sensitive physically. So like making sure you drink your water and you eat your protein, and like it feels even more important now than ever, just because of our physical DNA is actually shifting too, on top of the information that we're dealing with every day. So absolutely, I think that's going to be the biggest key in all of it. And then just taking that observer role that like the Akasha said, like you came here for this time,
Yeah.
so take care of your body while you do it, because it's not easy being a human.
No,
Exciting,
and
easy.
stress is the number one killer, as they
Yeah.
say. You know, I mean, like it always starts at an energetic level. And
Yep.
so if we are not properly managing our energy, properly clearing our energy, you know, exercising, like doing those things, like it's really going to compound.
Yeah.
And it might really compound again through like this slow time when we're just forced, you know, that ache that you've been ignoring for 4 years, it's all of a sudden going to become loud, you know, in a
Yeah.
completely different way.
Yeah.
And these are just things of, you know, a part of being a human. We have to do these things for ourselves. And the body is our greatest tool for our intuition. You know, it is the vessel. And so for those wanting to increase and strengthen their relationship with their intuition and wanting to connect in more, you know, you've got to be grounded in your body. You've got to be embodied. You've got to like being in your body. Otherwise, you're going to really struggle, you know, connecting with your intuition. And And again, I just feel like that's going to become more and more of a thing. I keep like going back and forth about this because it's like the Akasha seems to really kind of be putting like a endpoint in regard, like being really urgent about this and almost kind of putting like an endpoint on, like you've only got this much time, but like I know that there'll be more time. I just know it's going to be a lot harder. Do you see that from your perspective at all?
Yeah, for
How do you
sure.
see it?
I just see it like we're ending so many chapters and new cycles are beginning. And so like, it feels like reality is going to change completely. So I feel like taking care of our nervous system, like I always think about my body as it's an electrical circuit and it's constantly being affected by everything, right? All the toxins, all the Wi-Fi's, all the frequencies, all the people, like all the information. And so I always think about what the ancients used to do. We used to use the sun and water and the earth, right? Those, so like making sure you go get your eyes in the sun in the morning and at night so you can reprogram your cells so that you can like basically use the sun's light as it's meant to be used, use the earth, go outside for 5 minutes. Like I'm always trying to think about like what are the easiest, fastest ways I can get back into harmony with my nervous system, you know?
Yeah.
Taking a quick shower, taking a bath, going out into the earth and laying on the grass for 5 minutes, going to get the sunlight. Like they make such a freaking giant difference because we're just reharmonizing our nervous system back to the earth as she's going through these changes. So, but yeah, I really feel like reality as we know it is going to be very different. And I think we're rapidly moving through. I feel like humanity has chosen a timeline to kind of speed it up a bit. At least what it feels like this year, we've jumped a lot of timelines, and I don't want to like get too much into the quantum nerd talk, but like it feels like we've now chosen one that's like, okay, let's do this. Let's really start to create a new reality. But in order to do that, we have to see all of this that's happened to us and why and how, who's been pulling the strings, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So go back to the earth and use its tools.
You can't go
They're
wrong.
free.
That's
They're
for
free.
sure. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. They are free, readily available to everybody
Mhm.
in one way or another. All right, Miss Stevie, do you have any sort of final words? Anything that you'd like to just share with us?
I just like Anna was talking about our toolkit. I just finished Q4. And so there's way more details in the Astro videos about every single eclipse and new and full moon and the retrogrades. And
I can't
they're
wait.
because because Q4 is so packed, so are the astrological videos in our toolkit. And Anna's channelings from the Akasha are so grounding. Like it is so grounding to even I've had some clients say that have bought the toolkit. Like I've gone back after and rewatched August after August happened. And then I was able to really like get some clarity. So it is so packed full of tools to help you navigate these times, which for me is game changing. Like knowing this information and reading your forecast has been very helpful in grounding me and being like, okay, big picture, right? Zoom out, zoom out. So yeah, if you do want some guidance and some grounding, I would highly recommend getting that discount and just, getting Q4 because it's a lot of information in there that can really help you for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I would, like I would 100% own it if I wasn't creating it. Like there's no way around
absolutely.
it. Not even a question.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Stevie, for coming and sharing
Thank
wisdom
you.
and time. And so wonderful to have you back to the podcast again.
Thanks for having me. Always.
Yay. All right, folks, sending you so much love. Thank you for being here. We are wishing you the best for Q4. Make sure to check out, you could definitely find the toolkit in the show notes. Anything else that we discuss, all links are below. Please share this with someone who could benefit from it, learn from it, whatever the case may be. Thank you again for being here. And don't forget, when we invest in ourselves, the world benefits. Until next time.